Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of the worst trends that we ever saw promoted here in YouTube fitness, and that's blood flow restriction training. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling my crafting a little bit. Let's talk about this. And this is stuff that people need to remember when you're coming to sources of people for information on YouTube. I think it is important for us to look at what stuff as far as training and nutrition and everything else that people have promoted, and if they ever corrected themselves. Because it's one thing to give some bad advice and then realize you gave bad advice and say, hey guys, I could have been wrong. I mean, I've had to do that before. We all have to do that if we're going to be honest about things. You know, we make mistakes in the past sometimes, even those of us who try our best to give the best advice at all times, we don't always get it right. But the blood flow restriction training thing, and then later the above the knee rack pull thing were two of my biggest pet peeves. Because the blood flow restriction thing was just a hypothetical that was came up with in the exercise science world. You guys need to remember, a lot of these weird theories and things that get studied, these are done so that someone can earn their PhD. So you'll have PhD candidates who will come up with some absurd idea to test. And sometimes it's things like, hey, let me see how much force production you can produce on a bench press while laying on a BOSU ball instead of a flat bench, right? And then they come back, and if they find in their small study equal force production or whatever, then hey, on a BOSU ball it's just as good. And before long, if that gets circulated, you'll have idiots following it thinking that exercise science is promoting the idea of bench pressing laying on a BOSU ball, right? That's how this stuff works. Well, the blood flow restriction was like that. It was a hypothetical, guys, and it was never found to be superior in any way. Within the parameters of the original studies, this was not found to be a superior modality. What they found is that it seemed to be equal to traditional hypertrophy work on the blood markers afterwards. This wasn't even studied to see if muscle growth occurred. And that's what people need to understand. You had stuff like this that came out, studies were done on it, and it got hyped up, right? It got hyped up. And the sad part is this is the exact opposite of hard work. This is basically training for lazy people who don't want to train hard. Now, a lot of people be like, well, if you could get equal results training less hard, then what's the problem? In theory, that's good. That sounds good from an efficiency perspective. But the problem is that it gets marketed towards people who are looking for an easy way out, who legitimately think hard work sucks and they don't want to do it. Well, the reality is, if you actually legitimately proved that doing half the work in something would give you the exact same results, you would have a point. But you have to prove that. And I would agree. That comes to things like training volume. I absolutely agree. I agree completely. If doing 10 sets gives you the exact same muscle and strength of doing 20 sets, probably not a good idea to do 20 sets. That should just be common sense because you're putting in extra work for no benefit, putting wear and tear on yourself. And so if you produce repeated studies showing that, then obviously the 10 sets would be the more intelligent approach. So if we get to something like this, though, it's not proven to be equal. It is easier, but the problem we run into is that it carries its set of risk and requires people to buy things. So therefore, it is an inferior modality. In other words, if somehow there had been studies showing that over 12 weeks that people got equal growth in their muscles doing blood flow restriction versus non-blood flow restriction, it would be the inferior modality. Why? Because it requires you to buy objects, it requires more prep time, it makes you look like a douche nozzle in the gym, and it carries its own set of risks by tying tourniquets around yourself. Now people say, well, those risks are pretty small. They're pretty small, but if you're taking extra risk for no benefit, that's stupid. Even if there's a tiny percent, if you're going to take a 1 in 1,000 chance that you're going to suffer some health issue by doing something additional that has zero benefits, that makes you stupid. And that's essentially what this training was. And what people need to remember, even if you did come out with studies showing, oh yeah, man, this produced over 12 weeks the same muscle growth in my biceps that doing curls without the bands did. How do you know the curls are what even gave the bicep growth? Because we have multiple studies now confirming that like 10 and 12 week studies that people who add curls on top of their lat pull downs don't even grow their biceps faster. If they just do the curls by themselves, their biceps grow the same rate they do lat pull downs, but lat pull downs have been shown in repeated studies to produce just as much muscle growth in the bicep by themselves as adding 3 sets of 10 curls afterwards do. So how do you know that this isolation stuff even mattered at all? If you were doing lat pull downs or pull ups or whatever, your biceps might have already been maximally stimulated for a non-advanced lifter. Advanced lifters have different needs, obviously, but first year or two in the gym, studies don't even show curls add bicep growth if you're already doing reasonable volume on a lat pull down or a row or anything else. They just don't. That's what the data seems to indicate. So it wouldn't even prove anything there. The problem is they didn't even do that. None of that was done. It looked at blood markers to see if it produced similar metabolites. And at least one person I know of who's a science guy looked at the data and said, but these rep ranges were extreme fatigue taken to failure. These were like multiple sets of 30 taken to failure. Why didn't they do a control group where they took the bands off and just did the same weight with 20% or 30% for 30 rep sets and see if they got the same results? They didn't even have a control group for the bands without the bands who did the exact same thing. He predicted that those metabolites were produced just by the ultra high reps to failure even without the bands, that the bands didn't even matter. That's what at least one person I know of who's in the field kind of looked at and said, but no one addressed that. Yet what happened? All these YouTubers jumped on the blood flow restriction bandwagon. They jumped on the bandwagon. You guys remember that? How many YouTubers out there jumped up and instead of sticking with good, solid, proven information, they jumped on this trend. They were wrapping tourniquets around their arms and legs in the gym, looking like a douche nozzle, pretending like it's hardcore. You know what I think's hardcore? Doing weighted pull-ups and going all the way down. I think that's hardcore. How's that for hardcore? Not leaving your elbows bent at the bottom of your weighted pull-ups. Why don't you go all the way down so that you can actually work the upper chest and the long head of your triceps more? Yeah, I get more muscle involved on that big exercise. I think that's hardcore. You know what I think's hardcore? Squatting to depth. I think that's hardcore and badass. Why don't you try deadlifting and actually resetting on every rep instead of bouncing it off the floor? I think that's badass. I think that's hardcore. Why don't we do proper full range of motion training? I think that's hardcore. I don't think wrapping rubber bands and shit around your arms and legs is hardcore. I think it makes you a douche nozzle. But that's the problem, is that we had all these YouTubers promoting it. And the people still follow these guys. These are people who clearly had no interest in your best interest. They were just going to promote the newest hyped up thing because it was trendy and cool, and all the cool kids were doing it. So they just jumped on the bandwagon while a few of us were standing here saying this shit is stupid. And everyone followed. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people, they saw all these guys who did this, who had them do this silly stuff. Also, then they were selling their own bands sometimes. Yeah, there's profit to be made there. You know, because it's kind of hard to sell a chin-up bar and a dipping belt. Once everyone already has one, they don't need more, right? It's all about selling you products. Yeah, because, you know, you need more than a good barbell and a good set of plates and a rack to get gains, right? We got to sell you other stuff. But they all promoted it. People followed it, and people are still following these douche nozzles. All these guys who promoted this useless crap, this trendy crap, and how many of them jumped on the above the knee rack pull afterwards? People are still following them, aren't they? And the other end of the spectrum, we have tons of people out here who everyone forgets. A lot of us during all these phases kept telling you guys, look guys, just keep getting strong at the basics. Do full range of motion on your pull-ups, guys. Pause on your bench press. Get strong on the big exercises. It'll work out. You'll get big. You'll get strong. Do overhead pressing. Do it standing. Get strong on your squats. Get strong on your bench press. Get strong on your pull-ups. Your rows, your deadlift. You'll get big. Do the exercises correctly. Progressive overload. Proper training programming. Work hard. Find the balance between your minimum effective volume and your maximum recoverable volume and stay within there. Eat enough food, get enough sleep. You know, all of us were promoting all of this. We're all still around too. And people need to remember that, because a lot of these guys, they fell off the band with the blood flow restriction training, pardon the pun, because they realized it didn't do shit. And none of them ever apologized for it, did they? How many of the guys who promoted this stuff and wrapped tourniquets around their arms and legs, got up on camera, have come back and apologized and said, man, we were wrong. That was really stupid. Sorry for promoting that. None of them. I haven't seen any of them do it. Yet these douchebags still have followers. People still follow this crap after they did that. None of them apologized. It'd be different if they apologized and said, you know what, guys, I got caught up in the silly, trendy bandwagon. I won't do it again. Shame on me. None of them did that, did they? They didn't. If they did, I'd respect it more. I'd respect the guys who came out and did that, admitted, hey, I got caught up in the gimmick too. All right, fine, we all make mistakes. They're not admitting their mistakes. They just move on to the next trend, above the knee rack pulls and other shit. And people still follow them and take their bad advice. That's okay. They'll come up with a new trend that lets you just not do hard work and you'll get all the best results in the world, right? It'll be fine. They got that magic pill. And you're still going to be tiny and weak next year because that's who you're following. All right, guys. Well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.